Welcome, friend, to this peaceful journey through the sands of time, where we'll drift together into the ancient world of Egypt's Old Kingdom. Tonight, we're traveling back over 4,000 years to witness the birth of monuments that would define human civilization forever. Whether you're settling in for sleep or simply seeking to slow the rhythm of your evening, I'm grateful you're here with me. Have you ever wondered how an entire civilization could mobilize the resources, knowledge, and sheer human determination necessary to build structures so magnificent they would be called wonders of the world? The answer lies not in some mystical ancient technology, but in the remarkable story of a society that transformed from scattered villages along the Nile into the most sophisticated kingdom the world had ever known. What I'm about to share with you will reveal how ordinary people became part of something extraordinary, how kings became gods, and how the dreams of immortality carved in stone would outlast empires. This isn't just the story of pyramids rising from desert sands. This is the story of humanity's first glimpse of what we could achieve when we dared to build for eternity. The morning sun rises over the Nile in the year 2580 BCE, casting golden light across a landscape that pulses with unprecedented activity. In the villages scattered along the great river's banks, the day begins as it has for generations, yet everything has changed. The old ways of simple farming and fishing communities have given way to something far more complex and ambitious. Egypt has entered what we now call the Old Kingdom, and the very air seems charged with possibility. In a modest mud brick house near Memphis, a young scribe named Katie awakens before dawn. The cool morning air carries the scent of the Nile's fertile waters, mixed with the smoke of countless cooking fires already burning throughout the settlement. Katie's calloused hands reach for his reed pens and precious papyrus, tools that mark him as one of the educated elite in a society where literacy is both rare and revered. Today, like every day, he will walk to the great administrative complex where scribes like himself keep the intricate records that allow this vast kingdom to function. But Katie's work is unlike anything the world has ever seen before. He doesn't simply record grain harvests or livestock counts, though those remain important. Instead, his papyrus scrolls contain calculations that boggle the mind, numbers representing thousands of workers, precise measurements for massive stone blocks, and complex logistics for moving materials across hundreds of miles. Katie is helping to coordinate the construction of something that has never been attempted in human history, a pyramid so large and perfect that it will stand as humanity's greatest achievement for the next 4,000 years. As Katie makes his way through the narrow streets, he passes workshops already humming with activity. In one courtyard, master craftsmen examine copper tools with the intensity of surgeons, checking each chisel and saw for the precise sharpness required for working the finest limestone. These aren't the crude implements of earlier generations, but sophisticated instruments designed specifically for the monumental tasks ahead. The metalworkers have learned to create bronze alloys that hold their edge longer, while carpenters have developed new techniques for moving massive wooden levers and ramps. The transformation of Egyptian society during the Old Kingdom represents one of history's most remarkable organizational achievements. What had once been a collection of independent communities along the Nile has become a unified state capable of mobilizing resources on an unprecedented scale. This isn't simply a matter of having a powerful king issue commands. Instead, it requires the development of entirely new systems for administration, logistics, and social coordination that will influence civilizations for millennia to come. In the royal workshops of Memphis, artisans who once created simple pottery and basic jewelry now craft objects of breathtaking sophistication. Master sculptors spend years perfecting their ability to carve human forms with such precision that the stone seems to breathe. Painters develop new pigments and techniques that will preserve their work for thousands of years. Jewelers create ornaments of gold and precious stones that demonstrate not just wealth, but an aesthetic sensibility that rivals anything produced in later centuries. The social hierarchy that emerges during this period is complex and surprisingly fluid. While the pharaoh stands at the apex as a god-king, below him exists a sophisticated bureaucracy that offers opportunities for advancement based on skill and education rather than birth alone. Scribes like Katie can rise to positions of significant responsibility, overseeing vast construction projects or managing the agricultural resources of entire provinces. Master craftsmen develop reputations that transcend their humble origins, their skills so valued that they enjoy privileges once reserved for nobility. The daily rhythm of life in Old Kingdom Egypt revolves around the Nile's annual flood cycle, but now this natural phenomenon serves a purpose far greater than simple agriculture. During the months when floodwaters cover the farmland, making agricultural work impossible, thousands of farmers become construction workers. They travel from their villages to massive building sites where they join skilled masons, engineers, and labourers in the greatest construction projects humanity has ever undertaken. At the Giza Plateau, where the Great Pyramid of Khufu is taking shape, the scene defies imagination. Thousands of workers swarm across the construction site like ants, each person playing a precisely defined role in the massive undertaking. Teams of 20 men maneuver limestone blocks weighing several tons, using copper tools, wooden levers, and pure human determination. Ramps spiral up the pyramid's growing sides, their angles calculated with mathematical precision to allow the heaviest stones to be moved to increasingly impossible heights. The logistics of this operation require innovations that won't be matched for centuries. Bread bakers work around the clock to feed the massive workforce, their ovens consuming grain from across the kingdom. Water carriers maintain a constant supply of fresh Nile water, carried in ceramic jars up ramps and scaffolding to workers labouring in the blazing desert sun. Medical workers treat injuries and illnesses using techniques that represent the cutting edge of ancient medicine, their knowledge of anatomy enhanced by the mummification practices that preserve bodies for the afterlife. The religious beliefs that drive these massive construction projects permeate every aspect of daily life in Old Kingdom Egypt. The pharaoh isn't simply a political leader, but a living god whose successful transition to the afterlife ensures the continued prosperity of the entire kingdom. The pyramid isn't just a tomb, but a machine for resurrection. Its every dimension calculated according to religious principles that connect earthly architecture with cosmic forces. Workers who labour on these sacred projects don't see themselves as mere employees, but as participants in a divine enterprise that will benefit not just their god-king, but the cosmic order that maintains stability and prosperity for all Egyptians. This religious motivation helps explain how a society without modern machinery could sustain the enormous effort required to build monuments that remain among humanity's greatest achievements. The priests who oversee the religious aspects of these projects represent another crucial element of Old Kingdom society. They aren't simply ceremonial figures, but highly educated administrators who understand both theological principles and practical engineering. They work closely with architects and engineers to ensure that every aspect of construction aligns with religious requirements while maintaining structural integrity. Their knowledge of mathematics and astronomy rivals that of any civilization in the ancient world. The economic system that supports these massive undertakings represents a remarkable achievement in resource management. Egypt's agricultural abundance, generated by the Nile's annual floods, produces surpluses large enough to support not just farmers and their families, but vast numbers of specialists whose work contributes nothing directly to food production. Scribes, craftsmen, priests, soldiers, and construction workers all depend on the agricultural surplus generated by farming communities throughout the kingdom. This economic complexity requires sophisticated systems for collecting, storing, and distributing resources. Granaries in major cities store grain reserves that can feed thousands of workers for months at a time. Workshops produce the tools, clothing, and other supplies needed by specialized workers. Trade networks extend far beyond Egypt's borders, bringing in cedar wood from Lebanon, precious stones from Nubia, and copper from the Sinai Peninsula. The technological innovations developed during the Old Kingdom period would influence architecture and engineering for thousands of years. Egyptian architects learned to work with stone on a scale never before attempted, developing techniques for quarrying, transporting, and precisely positioning massive blocks. They create tools and methods for achieving tolerances measured in fractions of inches across structures hundreds of feet tall. Their understanding of leverage, friction, and structural engineering rivals that of much later civilizations. The mathematical knowledge required for these projects drives advances in geometry and calculation that wouldn't be matched for centuries. Surveyors develop techniques for laying out perfectly straight lines and precise right angles across vast distances. Architects learn to calculate volumes and weights with extraordinary accuracy. Engineers design ramp systems that allow massive stones to be moved up inclines that seem impossibly steep. As evening approaches across the kingdom, the great construction sites don't fall silent. Work continues by torchlight as teams of craftsmen carve hieroglyphic inscriptions into corridor walls, their copper chisels guided by hands trained through years of practice. The images they create aren't merely decorative, but serve as magical texts designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey through the afterlife. Each symbol must be perfect, each scene complete, for the magic to function properly. In the royal palace at Memphis, the pharaoh himself reviews plans and progress reports brought by his most trusted administrators. He examines scale models of architectural elements, discusses engineering challenges with master builders, and makes decisions that affect thousands of workers and enormous quantities of resources. His authority is absolute, but he relies heavily on the expertise of specialists who understand aspects of the great project that no single individual could master completely. The women of Old Kingdom Egypt play roles that are both traditional and surprisingly progressive for the ancient world. While most focus on managing households and raising children, some achieve positions of significant influence as priestesses, artists, or even government administrators. Noble women often oversee large estates and their associated workforces, making economic decisions that affect hundreds of people. Some become skilled scribes or artists, their work contributing to the cultural achievements that define the period. The children growing up during this remarkable era experience a world unlike anything in previous human history. They see monuments rising from the desert that dwarf anything their grandparents could have imagined. They learn crafts and skills that their ancestors never knew existed. Most importantly, they absorb the confidence and ambition that characterizes Old Kingdom society, the belief that human beings can achieve things that seem impossible if they organize their efforts properly and commit themselves completely to their goals. The villages and cities of Old Kingdom Egypt pulse with an energy that comes from participating in something greater than individual lives or local concerns. People understand that they are creating monuments that will endure for thousands of years, leaving evidence of their civilization's achievements for future generations to discover and admire. This sense of building for eternity infuses daily life with purpose and meaning that transcends the ordinary concerns of survival and comfort. As night settles over the Nile Valley, the Great Pyramid at Giza stands partially completed against the star-filled sky, its massive form already dwarfing every other human creation. Tomorrow will bring another day of impossible achievements made possible by human determination, ingenuity, and cooperation on a scale the world has never seen before. World has never seen before. The sound of hammers on copper chisels creates a rhythmic percussion that echoes across the limestone quarries south of Memphis as another dawn breaks over the Old Kingdom. In these quarries, master stonecutters examine the rock face with eyes trained to detect the subtle grain patterns that will determine whether a block can withstand the journey to Giza and the weight of stones that will rest upon it for eternity. Their knowledge, passed down through generations and refined through countless projects, represents one of humanity's first systematic approaches to materials science. Amenhotep, a quarry foreman whose weathered hands bear the scars of decades working stone, directs teams of workers as they prepare to extract blocks that will form the inner chambers of the Great Pyramid. Each block must meet specifications more precise than anything previously attempted in human construction. The measurements, recorded on papyrus scrolls by scribes who accompany every work gang, specify dimensions accurate to within the width of a reed pen. Any deviation could compromise the structural integrity of passages and chambers designed to bear unimaginable weight while remaining accessible for thousands of years. The workers who follow Amenhotep's directions represent a cross-section of Old Kingdom society that would have been impossible in earlier periods. Skilled masons work alongside farmers fulfilling their seasonal labor obligations. Their different backgrounds unified by shared purpose and mutual respect for expertise. The social distinctions that matter in daily village life become secondary to competence and reliability when the work involves moving stones that could crush a dozen men if improperly handled. The tools these workers use reflect the technological revolution that accompanies Egypt's architectural ambitions. Copper chisels maintain their edges longer than the stone tools of previous generations, while bronze implements offer even greater durability for the most demanding tasks. Wooden levers, crafted from imported cedar, provide mechanical advantage that allows human muscle to accomplish what would otherwise require divine intervention. Most remarkably, the workers employ mathematical principles that transform brute force into precise, controlled movement of massive objects. As the morning progresses, boats loaded with finished limestone blocks begin their journey down the Nile toward Giza. The vessels themselves represent another marvel of Old Kingdom engineering, their hulls reinforced to carry loads that would sink ordinary craft. Experienced pilots navigate channels and currents with knowledge gained through years of transporting increasingly massive cargoes, their skills now essential to the kingdom's greatest projects. The journey downstream reveals a landscape transformed by the ambitions of the Old Kingdom. Villages that once existed in relative isolation now serve as supply stations and administrative centers for the great construction projects. Workshops produce specialized tools and materials for shipment to building sites hundreds of miles away. Granaries store reserves calculated to feed massive workforces through seasons when agricultural production cannot meet the demands of both farmers and construction workers. At way stations along the river, administrators coordinate the movement of resources with precision that rivals modern logistics systems. Scribes maintain inventories of everything from copper chisels to linen garments, their records enabling project managers to anticipate needs and prevent delays that could affect thousands of workers. The papyrus scrolls they create will survive in tomb chambers and administrative archives, providing future archaeologists with detailed insights into the organizational complexity of these ancient achievements. The social innovations required to sustain these massive projects prove as remarkable as the technological advances. Traditional village hierarchies expand to accommodate new categories of specialists whose skills have no precedent in earlier Egyptian society. Master architects enjoy status comparable to high priests, their expertise in structural engineering and mathematical calculation earning them positions of extraordinary influence. Skilled craftsmen form professional guilds that maintain quality standards and training programs, ensuring that crucial knowledge passes from master to apprentice without loss or corruption. The daily routine of workers on the Great Pyramid site follows patterns established through years of experience with large-scale construction projects. Teams assemble before dawn to take advantage of cooler temperatures, their work organized according to principles that maximize both efficiency and safety. The most dangerous tasks, such as positioning capstones at great heights, are performed by the most experienced workers, using techniques refined through countless repetitions on smaller structures. Medical workers stationed at the construction site treat injuries with knowledge gained through the mummification practices that preserve bodies for the afterlife. Their understanding of human anatomy, enhanced by religious procedures that require detailed knowledge of internal organs, enables them to provide care that surpasses anything available in other ancient civilizations. The medical papyri they create will influence healing practices for thousands of years. Their observations and treatments representing humanity's first systematic approach to clinical medicine. The religious ceremonies that sanctify each stage of construction involve the entire workforce in rituals that connect their physical labor with cosmic purposes. Priests trained in both theology and engineering oversee procedures that ensure spiritual as well as structural integrity. Their blessings and incantations believed to imbue the stones themselves with protective power. These ceremonies reinforce the sense of divine purpose that motivates workers to achieve standards of precision and quality that seem impossible given their tools and techniques. The astronomical knowledge required to align the Great Pyramid with celestial bodies drives advances in observation and calculation that won't be equaled for centuries. Priest astronomers spend years mapping the movements of stars and planets, their measurements enabling architects to position the pyramid's passages and chambers according to religious requirements that demand perfect accuracy. The star shafts that connect interior chambers with specific constellations represent engineering achievements that combine spiritual purpose with mathematical precision. The economic impact of these massive construction projects extends throughout Egyptian society in ways that reshape the entire kingdom. Villages that supply food and materials for the building sites experience unprecedented prosperity. Their surplus agricultural production, commanding premium prices in markets created by construction demand. Craft specialists who produce tools and equipment for the projects develop new techniques and materials that find applications far beyond their original purposes. Trade networks established to import materials for the pyramids create commercial relationships that will influence Egyptian foreign policy for centuries. Cedar wood from Lebanese forests, granite from Aswan quarries, and precious metals from Nubian mines all flow toward Giza through supply chains that require diplomatic agreements and military protection. These commercial connections spread Egyptian influence throughout the ancient world, while bringing foreign ideas and technologies into the kingdom. The administrative systems developed to coordinate these vast enterprises establish precedents for governmental organization that will influence civilizations throughout the ancient Mediterranean. The bureaucratic structures that manage labor forces, resource allocation, and quality control create career paths for educated individuals whose expertise in planning and coordination proves valuable in contexts far removed from pyramid construction. The records they maintain provide templates for administrative procedures that other kingdoms will adapt to their own needs. The cultural confidence that emerges from these achievements permeates every aspect of Old Kingdom society. Artists and writers, inspired by the monumental scale of contemporary architecture, create works that reflect similar ambitions for permanence and perfection. The literature they produce explores themes of immortality and divine purpose that mirror the religious beliefs underlying the construction projects. Their artistic techniques, developed to decorate tomb chambers and temple walls, achieve levels of sophistication that won't be surpassed for thousands of years. The educational systems that train specialists for these projects represent humanity's first systematic approach to technical education. Master craftsmen establish schools where apprentices learn not just practical skills, but the mathematical and engineering principles underlying their crafts. The knowledge preserved in these educational institutions will survive the eventual decline of the Old Kingdom, providing the foundation for architectural and artistic achievements in later periods of Egyptian history. As afternoon heat makes outdoor work increasingly difficult, many construction activities shift to covered workshops where detail work continues, regardless of weather conditions. Stonemasons carve hieroglyphic inscriptions with precision that requires years of training to achieve. Their chisels, guided by hands, that understand how different types of stone respond to various cutting techniques. The inscriptions they create aren't merely decorative, but serve as magical texts designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful navigation of the afterlife's challenges. The quality control systems that ensure consistency across thousands of stone blocks represent another organizational innovation that will influence construction practices for millennia. Master masons inspect each piece of work according to standards that tolerate no deviation from specified dimensions and surface finishes. Rejected blocks are either reworked to meet requirements or relegated to less critical applications, their imperfections deemed unacceptable for inclusion in structures designed to last forever. The logistics of feeding thousands of workers require agricultural planning and food distribution systems of unprecedented sophistication. Bakers work in shifts to maintain constant supplies of bread, their ovens consuming grain from storage facilities that must anticipate consumption months in advance. Brewers produce beer that provides both nutrition and safe hydration for workers laboring in desert conditions where contaminated water could prove fatal. The calculations required to maintain adequate food supplies demonstrate mathematical capabilities that rival those used in architectural planning. The seasonal rhythms that govern agricultural work throughout the kingdom now serve the additional purpose of providing massive labor forces during flood periods, when farming becomes impossible. Village leaders coordinate the movement of their people to construction sites, their organizational skills essential for managing the logistics of housing, feeding, and directing thousands of temporary workers. These seasonal migrations create social connections between communities that might otherwise remain isolated, fostering cultural exchange and technological diffusion throughout the kingdom. The evening routines at construction sites include activities that reflect the complex social dynamics of Old Kingdom Egypt. Skilled craftsmen gather to share techniques and innovations, their conversations contributing to the continuous improvement of construction methods. Workers from different villages exchange stories and songs that spread throughout the kingdom, creating a shared cultural identity that transcends local traditions. These informal interactions prove as important as formal training programs in preserving and transmitting the knowledge required for monumental construction. The night shifts that continue work on interior chambers operate by oil lamp light, their illumination carefully managed to prevent fire hazards while providing adequate visibility for precision work. The artists who paint corridor walls and chamber ceilings work in conditions that test both their skill and endurance, their brushstrokes guided by artistic traditions that demand perfect execution, even in the most challenging circumstances. The pigments they use, created from minerals and organic compounds according to recipes that will remain unchanged for centuries, produce colors that retain their brilliance in the darkness of sealed tomb chambers. The security measures that protect both workers and materials from theft or sabotage reflect the enormous value concentrated at construction sites. Guards patrol the perimeter using techniques developed for protecting royal palaces and religious temples, their presence necessary to maintain order among the thousands of people whose temporary communities spring up around major projects. The administrative systems that track tools, materials, and personnel prevent losses that could delay construction and waste resources that represent the collective labor of entire communities. As the stars wheel overhead in patterns that Egyptian astronomers have mapped with extraordinary precision, the Great Pyramid continues its inexorable rise toward completion, each day bringing measurable progress toward a goal that will define human achievement for thousands of years to come. The pre-dawn darkness that shrouds the Nile Valley carries sounds that would have been impossible just generations earlier. The rhythmic chanting of work gangs echoes across the water as they coordinate the movement of granite obelisks, their voices creating a cadence that helps synchronize the efforts of dozens of men pulling ropes in perfect unison. These aren't the simple work songs of farmers tending fields, but complex musical arrangements developed specifically for the precise timing required when moving objects that weigh as much as entire buildings. Chemoset, a master rope maker whose calloused fingers can judge the strength of twisted fibers with a touch, inspects the thick cables that will bear impossible loads throughout another day of construction. His workshop, located near the harbour where stone-laden barges arrive from upstream quarries, operates around the clock, producing the specialised equipment that makes monumental architecture possible. The ropes he creates must meet specifications that account for stress factors no previous generation of craftsmen ever needed to consider. The mathematics involved in calculating rope strength, load distribution and safety margins represents knowledge that emerges directly from practical necessity rather than abstract theoretical study. Chemoset and his fellow specialists develop formulas through trial and error, their calculations refined by experience with projects that push materials and techniques to their absolute limits. The papyrus scrolls where they record their findings become technical manuals that will guide construction practices for centuries. In the workers' villages that surround the great construction sites, the social dynamics of Old Kingdom Egypt reveal themselves through daily interactions that would have been impossible under earlier social arrangements. Skilled stonemasons from Upper Egypt work alongside experienced carpenters from the Delta region, their regional differences becoming secondary to shared professional expertise. The temporary communities that emerge around major projects create opportunities for cultural exchange that permanently alter local traditions throughout the kingdom. The housing arrangements in these construction villages reflect both practical necessity and social innovation. Barrack-style accommodations house seasonal workers who arrive during flood periods, while permanent specialists enjoy more elaborate quarters that acknowledge their essential roles in ongoing projects. The distinctions between different types of workers create hierarchies based on skill and experience rather than birth, establishing precedents for social mobility that will influence Egyptian society for generations. The food distribution systems that sustain these massive workforces require coordination between agricultural regions hundreds of miles apart. Administrators in Memphis calculate consumption requirements months in advance, their projections accounting for seasonal variations in both labour force size and food availability. The granaries that store these supplies represent architectural achievements in their own right. Their design optimized for preservation and controlled distribution of resources that determine the success or failure of entire construction campaigns. The health and safety measures implemented at construction sites demonstrate sophisticated understanding of occupational hazards and preventive medicine. Workers receive regular medical examinations that identify problems before they become serious enough to affect productivity or endanger lives. The physicians who provide this care combine traditional healing practices with innovations developed specifically for treating injuries common in heavy construction work. Their knowledge expanding through direct experience with challenges no previous medical practitioners ever faced. The religious observances that punctuate each day's work connect individual labour with cosmic purposes that give meaning to seemingly impossible tasks. Dawn ceremonies invoke protective deities before dangerous operations begin, while evening rituals acknowledge the day's achievements and seek divine blessing for continued progress. These spiritual practices aren't mere formalities, but essential elements of a worldview that transforms exhausting physical labour into sacred service with eternal significance. The tool maintenance workshops that support construction operations represent another category of specialized facility unknown in earlier periods. Master metalworkers spend their days sharpening chisels, repairing levers, and creating replacement parts for equipment that endures stresses no previous tools were designed to withstand. Their expertise in metallurgy advances through constant experimentation with alloys and techniques that improve performance under extreme conditions. The quality assurance procedures that govern every aspect of construction work establish standards that seem almost modern in their precision and consistency. Each stone block receives multiple inspections at different stages of preparation and installation, with rejected pieces either reworked to meet specifications or assigned to less critical applications. The documentation systems that track these quality control measures create permanent records of construction standards that will influence building practices throughout Egyptian history. The seasonal migrations that bring agricultural workers to construction sites during flood periods create social phenomena that reshape rural life throughout the kingdom. Young men from farming families experience urban environments and technical occupations that broaden their perspectives and skills, while village elders gain experience in large-scale project management that they apply to local improvements when they return home. These cyclical movements of people and ideas accelerate cultural development across all levels of Egyptian society. The educational opportunities available to promising young workers represent unprecedented social mobility in the ancient world. Apprenticeship programs allow talented individuals to learn specialized crafts that offer alternatives to agricultural labor, while literacy training creates pathways to administrative careers that previous generations could never have imagined. The schools that provide this education establish curricula that balance practical skills with theoretical knowledge, their graduates forming a new class of technical professionals. The economic networks that supply materials for pyramid construction create commercial relationships that extend Egyptian influence throughout the known world. Traders who transport cedar logs from Lebanese forests, granite blocks from Nubian quarries, and precious metals from distant mines establish diplomatic and commercial connections that will shape international relations for centuries. These trade routes become conduits for cultural exchange that introduce foreign technologies and ideas into Egyptian society. The administrative innovations required to coordinate these vast enterprises establish governmental structures that will serve as models for later civilizations. The bureaucratic hierarchies that manage personnel, resources, and schedules create career paths for educated individuals whose organizational skills prove valuable in contexts far removed from construction work. The records they maintain provide templates for administrative procedures that other kingdoms will adapt to their specific needs and circumstances. The technological developments that emerge from pyramid construction find applications throughout Egyptian society, transforming everything from agricultural practices to domestic architecture. The mathematical principles used to achieve perfect pyramid proportions influence the design of temples, palaces, and private residences, while engineering techniques developed for moving massive stones improve transportation systems throughout the kingdom. These innovations create a technological foundation that will support Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. The cultural achievements that accompany monumental architecture reflect confidence and ambition that permeate every aspect of Old Kingdom society. Artists working on tomb decorations develop techniques and styles that will define Egyptian aesthetic traditions for millennia, while writers create literature that explores themes of immortality and divine purpose, inspired by the permanent monuments rising around them. The cultural productions of this period achieve levels of sophistication that won't be surpassed in many areas for thousands of years. The diplomatic implications of pyramid construction extend far beyond Egypt's borders, as foreign rulers and merchants recognize the organizational capabilities and resource mobilization that these projects represent. Trade delegations and diplomatic missions arrive from throughout the ancient world, their reports carrying descriptions of Egyptian achievements that enhance the kingdom's international prestige and influence. These diplomatic contacts establish relationships that will prove crucial for Egypt's security and prosperity in later periods. The environmental modifications required for major construction projects demonstrate unprecedented ability to reshape landscapes according to human purposes. Harbours are expanded and deepened to accommodate larger vessels carrying heavier loads, while roads and ramps are engineered to specific grades that optimize the movement of materials across difficult terrain. These infrastructure improvements serve construction needs while creating transportation networks that benefit the entire kingdom's economic development. The astronomical observations that guide pyramid orientation require knowledge of celestial mechanics that won't be equaled for centuries. Priest astronomers develop instruments and techniques for measuring star positions with extraordinary accuracy their calculations enabling architects to align passages and chambers according to religious requirements that demand perfect precision. The astronomical knowledge accumulated through these observations will influence calendar systems and navigation techniques throughout the ancient Mediterranean world. The archives that preserve construction records, technical specifications, and administrative procedures create libraries of practical knowledge that will serve future generations of builders and administrators. The papyrus scrolls stored in these archives contain information about everything from quarrying techniques to labour management, their preservation ensuring that hard-won expertise doesn't disappear when individual projects are completed. These documentary collections represent humanity's first systematic approach to preserving and transmitting technical knowledge. The social ceremonies that celebrate construction milestones involve entire communities in festivities that reinforce collective identity and shared purpose. The completion of major structural elements occasions celebrations that combine religious observance with popular entertainment, their pageantry demonstrating the kingdom's prosperity and organizational capabilities to both domestic and foreign observers. These public events create lasting memories that associate individual participation in great projects with national pride and cultural achievement. The legacy planning that accompanies pyramid construction reflects long-term thinking that extends far beyond individual lifespans or royal reigns. Endowment systems established to maintain completed monuments create permanent institutions that will preserve these achievements for future generations, while training programs ensure that specialized knowledge required for maintenance and restoration passes to qualified successors. This institutional continuity will enable Egyptian monuments to survive political upheavals and cultural changes that destroy the achievements of other ancient civilizations. As another day draws to its close across the Old Kingdom, the Great Pyramid at Giza stands measurably taller against the evening sky, its ascending courses of precisely fitted stones, bearing testimony to human capabilities that seem to transcend the limitations of muscle, bronze, and determination that previous generations accepted as absolute boundaries of possibility. Transcend the bronze previous that, and determination boundaries generations accepted as absolute of possibility. The morning ritual at the Great Pyramid begins before the first light touches the eastern horizon, when teams of water carriers begin their ascent up the massive ramp systems that spiral around the monument's growing form. Each man carries 2 leather vessels suspended from wooden yokes across their shoulders, their steady climb becoming a meditation in motion as they navigate pathways that rise hundreds of feet above the desert floor. The water they transport isn't just for drinking, but serves the crucial purpose of keeping stone dust settled during the precise cutting and fitting work that transforms rough limestone blocks into perfectly joined courses. In the shadow of the pyramid's northern face, Master Mason Seneb runs his practiced hands along the surface of a block that will become part of the king's chamber, his fingertips detecting imperfections invisible to untrained eyes. The limestone must meet tolerances that leave no room for approximation, each surface polished to a smoothness that will remain unchanged for thousands of years. Seneb's workshop, carved into the bedrock beneath the construction site, houses tools that represent generations of accumulated knowledge about working stone, their bronze edges maintained to surgical sharpness by specialists who understand that even the smallest imperfection in a cutting instrument can compromise the integrity of an entire structural element. The sound of copper chisels striking stone creates a rhythm that echoes across the plateau, each strike calculated to remove precisely the amount of material necessary to achieve the desired shape and surface finish. The workers who wield these tools have developed techniques that transform brute force into controlled precision, their movements guided by years of experience that teach them to read the grain of limestone as easily as scribes read hieroglyphic texts. The stone dust that fills the air catches the morning light like powdered gold, creating an atmosphere that seems touched by divine presence. As the sun climbs higher, the ramp systems that allow massive blocks to be moved up the pyramid's sides become highways of constant activity. Teams of 20 men guide stones weighing several tons along pathways whose angles have been calculated with mathematical precision to provide maximum mechanical advantage while maintaining safe operating conditions. The wooden rollers beneath each block must be repositioned constantly, their placement requiring coordination that develops through months of working together under conditions that demand absolute trust between team members. The foremen who direct these operations possess knowledge that combines practical engineering with intuitive understanding of human limitations and capabilities. They can judge the fatigue level of their teams with a glance, knowing exactly when to call for rest periods that prevent injuries, while maintaining the steady progress that keeps the entire project on schedule. Their decisions affect not just immediate productivity, but the long-term health and morale of workers whose dedication makes the impossible seem routine. In the permanent workshops that surround the pyramid site, craftsmen who will never see the completion of their work continue tasks that require patience measured in years rather than days. Stone carvers create decorative elements whose intricate details will remain hidden in sealed chambers, their artistry driven by religious conviction that demands perfection, regardless of whether human eyes will ever admire their achievements. The hieroglyphic inscriptions they carve serve purposes that transcend mere decoration, functioning as magical texts designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey through the challenges of the afterlife. The midday heat transforms the construction site into a test of human endurance that separates dedicated workers from those who lack the commitment necessary for monumental achievement. Most heavy lifting operations cease during the hottest hours, but detail work continues in shaded areas where precision tasks can proceed regardless of temperature. The painters who apply pigments to corridor walls work by oil lamp light, their brushstrokes creating images that must remain perfect for eternity, each color mixed according to formulas that preserve brilliance in the darkness of sealed tomb chambers. The administrative complex that coordinates pyramid construction operates with efficiency that rivals modern project management systems. Its scribes maintaining records that track everything from individual worker productivity to the precise inventory of materials stored in dozens of supply depots. The papyrus scrolls they create contain information so detailed that future archaeologists will be able to reconstruct not just the construction techniques used, but the daily routines and personal relationships that made such massive undertakings possible. Katie, now promoted to senior scribe after years of faithful service, reviews reports that detail progress on interior passages, whose complexity challenges the mathematical knowledge of the kingdom's most learned scholars. The king's chamber, with its precisely angled ceiling and perfectly smooth granite walls, requires construction techniques that push existing capabilities to their absolute limits. Every measurement must be verified multiple times, every joint inspected with instruments calibrated to detect variations smaller than the width of a papyrus reed. The supply chains that feed materials to the construction site represent logistical achievements that won't be equaled for centuries. Their efficiency, depending on coordination between hundreds of administrators scattered across the kingdom. Copper mines in the Sinai Peninsula increase production to meet the enormous demand for tools, while quarries throughout Egypt operate at capacity to supply the thousands of blocks required for each level of the pyramid's ascending structure. The boats that transport these materials navigate Nile channels, dredged specifically to accommodate loads that would have been unthinkable just decades earlier. The social dynamics within the workers' villages reflect the complex hierarchies that emerge when thousands of people from different backgrounds must cooperate on tasks requiring absolute precision and coordination. Experienced masons enjoy status comparable to court officials, their expertise acknowledged through better housing, premium food rations, and exemption from the most physically demanding labour. Younger workers compete for apprenticeship opportunities that offer pathways to respected crafts, their ambition driving them to volunteer for dangerous tasks that demonstrate courage and commitment. The evening routines that mark the end of each construction day include ceremonies that acknowledge both human achievement and divine protection. They're rituals connecting individual labour with cosmic purposes that give meaning to exhausting work. priests trained in engineering as well as theology oversee procedures that ensure spiritual as well as structural integrity. Their blessings believed to imbue the stones themselves with protective power that will endure for thousands of years. The medical facilities that serve the construction workforce represent advances in practical healthcare that emerge directly from the challenges of maintaining worker health under extreme conditions. Physicians trained in trauma treatment handle injuries that occur when massive stones shift unexpectedly, while specialists in occupational medicine develop therapies for conditions that result from prolonged exposure to stone dust and repetitive physical stress. Their knowledge, gained through direct experience with problems no previous medical practitioners ever encountered, advances understanding of human anatomy and healing techniques. The educational systems that train replacements for skilled workers create opportunities for social advancement unprecedented in the ancient world. Young men from farming families can learn crafts that offer alternatives to agricultural labor, while promising students receive literacy training that opens pathways to administrative careers. The schools that provide this education establish curricula that balance practical skills with theoretical knowledge, their graduates forming a new class of technical professionals whose expertise will serve Egypt long after pyramid construction ends. The quality control procedures that govern every aspect of construction work establish standards that seem almost modern in their precision and documentation. Each stone block receives multiple inspections during quarrying, transport, and installation, with detailed records maintained of any defects or repairs required to meet specifications. The consistency achieved through these procedures ensures that structural elements installed years apart will fit together with tolerances measured in fractions of inches. The technological innovations developed for pyramid construction find applications throughout Egyptian society, transforming everything from domestic architecture to agricultural practices. The mathematical principles used to achieve perfect pyramid proportions influence the design of temples and palaces, while engineering techniques developed for moving massive stones improve transportation systems throughout the kingdom. These advances create a technological foundation that will support Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. The astronomical knowledge required to align pyramid passages with specific celestial bodies drives advances in observation and calculation that represent humanity's first systematic approach to understanding cosmic mechanics. Priest astronomers spend years mapping stellar movements, their measurements enabling architects to position interior chambers according to religious requirements that demand perfect accuracy. The star shafts that connect burial chambers with constellation points represent engineering achievements that combine spiritual purpose with mathematical precision. The cultural confidence that emerges from these monumental achievements permeates every aspect of Old Kingdom society, inspiring artists and writers to create works that reflect similar ambitions for permanence and perfection. The literature produced during this period explores themes of immortality and divine purpose that mirror the religious beliefs underlying pyramid construction, while artistic techniques developed for tomb decoration achieve levels of sophistication that won't be surpassed for thousands of years. As darkness settles over the construction site, the Great Pyramid stands as testimony to human capabilities that seem to transcend the physical limitations of Bronze Age technology. Its precise geometry and massive scale representing achievements that will inspire wonder and speculation for thousands of years to come. The workers who created this monument understood that they were participating in something that would outlast empires and civilizations, their individual contributions becoming part of humanity's greatest architectural achievement. The night shifts that continue work on interior chambers operate under carefully controlled conditions that protect both workers and the delicate surfaces they create. Oil lamps provide illumination that must be managed to prevent fire hazards while ensuring adequate visibility for precision work, their placement calculated to eliminate shadows that could hide imperfections in carved inscriptions or painted decorations. The artists who work through these nocturnal hours develop techniques for maintaining consistent quality regardless of lighting conditions, their dedication ensuring that hidden chambers receive the same attention to detail as public spaces. The security measures that protect the construction site reflect both the enormous value concentrated in materials and tools and the sacred nature of work that prepares the pharaoh's eternal residence. Guards patrol according to schedules that provide continuous coverage while allowing for the constant movement of workers and materials that characterizes round-the-clock construction operations. Their presence maintains order among temporary communities that spring up around major projects, their authority acknowledged by workers who understand that disruption could delay completion of structures designed to ensure Egypt's continued prosperity. The legacy that these achievements will create extends far beyond the physical monuments rising from desert sand, establishing precedents for human organization and technical capability that will influence civilizations throughout history. The administrative systems developed to coordinate massive workforces will provide templates for governmental structures, while the engineering techniques pioneered for monumental architecture will advance building practices for thousands of years. Most importantly, the proof that human beings can achieve seemingly impossible goals through careful planning, skilled craftsmanship, and unwavering dedication will inspire future generations to attempt their own monumental projects. The dawn that breaks over the Old Kingdom each morning illuminates a civilization at the height of its power and creativity, its people united in pursuit of achievements that transcend individual lifespans and establish permanent monuments to human potential. The pyramid that grows daily taller represents more than royal ambition or religious devotion, embodying the collective capability of a society that dared to build for eternity and possess the knowledge, organization, and determination necessary to transform that audacious vision into enduring reality. Embo Taller represents religious devotion, dying the collective capability than royal ambition, or of a society that Maud possessed, Atabil eternity, and for organization the knowledge, to transform Dak O and determination Nessus, Ari Thash's vision into enduring reality. The first rays of sunlight pierce through the narrow window slits of the workers' quarters, where Hetep stretches his aching limbs and prepares for another day that will push the boundaries of human achievement. His hands, scarred by years of rope work, reach for the leather water pouch that will sustain him through the scorching hours ahead. Around him, dozens of other workers begin their morning rituals, each man understanding that today's labor will add another imperceptible layer to humanity's greatest monument. The walk from the barracks to the pyramid site reveals a landscape transformed by ambition into something that defies natural order. Ramps spiral upward like the backbone of some impossible creature, their wooden frameworks groaning under loads that would have seemed magical to previous generations. Teams of oxen strain against harnesses designed to distribute weights that push animal strength beyond all reasonable limits, their movements coordinated by drivers who have learned to read the subtle signs of fatigue that precede catastrophic failure. In the stonemasons' workshops, carved directly into the bedrock, the air fills with dust so fine it seems to hang suspended like morning mist. Each particle representing material removed with surgical precision from blocks destined for the pharaoh's eternal chamber. Master craftsman Anku examines granite surfaces with intensity that borders on religious devotion, his trained eye detecting flaws invisible to anyone lacking decades of experience. Working stone that must remain perfect for thousands of years. The tools arranged on wooden benches around Anku's workspace represent technological marvels that previous generations could never have imagined. Copper chisels maintain edges sharp enough to slice papyrus, their metal composition refined through countless experiments with alloys that balance hardness against brittleness. Bronze implements offer even greater durability for tasks requiring prolonged use, while specialized hammers distribute impact forces according to principles that transform brute strength into controlled precision. The mathematical calculations required to shape these granite blocks challenge the intellectual capabilities of Egypt's most educated scribes, their papyrus scrolls covered with geometric figures and numerical notations that represent humanity's first systematic approach to three-dimensional problem solving. Each measurement must account for the weight of stones that will rest above, the thermal expansion of materials exposed to desert temperature extremes, and the structural loads that will test these joints for millennia beyond the lives of their creators. As morning progresses toward the brutal heat of midday, the pyramid site transforms into a choreographed dance of human movement that defies comprehension. Hundreds of workers swarm across surfaces that rise hundreds of feet above the desert floor, their individual actions coordinated through hand signals and vocal calls that create communication systems adapted specifically for construction at impossible heights. The margin for error in these operations approaches zero, as a single misstep could send massive stones crashing down through multiple levels of scaffolding and human activity. The ramp systems that enable stones to reach these heights represent engineering achievements that won't be equaled for centuries. Their angles calculated to provide maximum mechanical advantage while maintaining structural stability under loads that stress wood and rope beyond normal breaking points. Teams of engineers continuously inspect these temporary structures, their expertise preventing failures that could kill dozens of workers while destroying months of accumulated progress. Senebke, a ramp foreman whose weathered face bears the marks of 20 years directing impossible operations, studies the morning's transport schedule with concentration that reflects the life and death consequences of miscalculation. Each stone must reach its designated position according to timetables that coordinate the efforts of hundreds of individuals, their interdependence creating a web of mutual responsibility that transforms individual workers into components of a larger organism pursuing collective goals. The quality standards that govern every aspect of construction work establish tolerances that seem almost supernatural given the tools and techniques available to these ancient builders. Surfaces that will remain hidden for thousands of years receive the same attention to detail as elements visible to contemporary observers, their perfection driven by religious conviction that demands excellence regardless of whether human eyes will ever witness the achievement. In workshops, scattered throughout the construction complex, specialists pursue tasks that require patience measured in years rather than days or weeks. Hieroglyphic carvers create inscriptions whose precision rivals the finest calligraphy, their copper tools guided by hands trained to maintain consistent depth and spacing across thousands of individual symbols. The texts they carve serve purposes that transcend mere decoration, functioning as magical formulas designed to protect the pharaoh's spirit during its journey through the perils of the afterlife. The pigment specialists who will color these inscriptions work with materials imported from across the known world, their knowledge of chemistry enabling them to create colors that will retain their brilliance in the absolute darkness of sealed chambers. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan provides blues that capture the essence of the heavenly realm, while gold leaf, applied with brushes made from single hairs, creates surfaces that glow like captured sunlight, even in the absence of illumination. The midday break brings temporary respite from the crushing heat, but work continues in shaded areas where delicate operations can proceed regardless of temperature. Stone polishers use progressively finer abrasives to achieve surface finishes, smoother than most modern builders could accomplish with power tools. Their technique requiring knowledge passed down through generations of craftsmen who understood that perfection cannot be rushed or approximated. The water distribution system that sustains this massive workforce represents another organizational marvel. Its efficiency depending on careful calculation of consumption rates and transportation logistics that account for the enormous energy expenditure required to carry liquid up-ramps that climb hundreds of feet above ground level. Teams of water carriers develop the physical endurance of trained athletes, their daily ascents and descents conditioning them for loads that would exhaust ordinary individuals within hours. The food preparation facilities that feed thousands of workers operate with industrial efficiency that won't be matched for centuries, their bread ovens consuming grain shipped from agricultural regions throughout the kingdom. Master bakers work in shifts to maintain constant supplies of fresh food, their recipes adapted to provide maximum nutrition for laborers performing physical tasks that push human capabilities to absolute limits. The logistics of feeding this workforce require advanced planning that accounts for seasonal variations, in both labor force size and food availability, creating supply chains that extend across hundreds of miles. The medical facilities established to treat construction injuries represent advances in trauma care that emerge directly from the unique challenges of maintaining worker health under extreme conditions. Physicians trained in battlefield medicine adapt their techniques for accidents involving massive stones and wooden machinery, while specialists in occupational health develop treatments for conditions that result from prolonged exposure to stone dust and repetitive physical stress. Their knowledge, gained through direct experience with problems no previous medical practitioners ever encountered, advances understanding of human anatomy and healing procedures. The afternoon shift brings renewed intensity as workers race to complete daily quotas before exhaustion makes precision work impossible, their movements driven by pride that transforms individual labor into contributions to something greater than personal survival or comfort. The social bonds that develop among work teams create loyalties that transcend regional differences and traditional class distinctions, their shared experiences forging relationships based on mutual respect for competence and dedication rather than inherited status. The religious ceremonies that mark significant construction milestones involve entire communities in celebrations that reinforce collective identity and shared purpose, their pageantry demonstrating the kingdom's prosperity and organizational capabilities to both domestic and foreign observers. Priests trained in both theology and engineering oversee rituals that connect human achievement with divine blessing, their presence ensuring that spiritual requirements receive the same attention as structural necessities. The evening routines that conclude each day of construction include maintenance activities that preserve tools and equipment essential for continued progress, their careful attention to detail reflecting understanding that even small oversights can cascade into major delays affecting thousands of workers. Tool sharpeners work through the night to restore cutting edges dulled by contact with limestone and granite, their expertise enabling the precision required for joints that must remain perfect across geological timescales. As stars appear in the darkening sky above the pyramid site, the monument itself stands as testimony to human capabilities that transcend the apparent limitations of Bronze Age technology, its geometric perfection and massive scale representing achievements that will inspire wonder and speculation for thousands of years. The workers who labor on this project understand that they participate in something that will outlast kingdoms and empires, their individual efforts becoming permanent elements of humanity's greatest architectural achievement. The night shifts that continue work on interior chambers operate under conditions that test both skill and endurance. Their oil lamp illumination carefully managed to prevent fire hazards while providing adequate visibility for precision tasks. Artists who paint corridor walls work in nearly impossible conditions, their brushstrokes creating images that must remain flawless for eternity, despite being applied in cramped spaces with minimal lighting. The dedication required for such work reflects spiritual conviction that finds meaning in perfection pursued for its own sake rather than for human recognition or reward. The security measures protecting the construction site must balance accessibility for legitimate workers against prevention of theft or sabotage that could compromise materials representing the collective labor of entire communities. Guards patrol, according to schedules, that provide continuous coverage while accommodating the constant movement of personnel and materials that characterizes round-the-clock operations, their presence maintaining order among temporary settlements that spring up around major projects. The legacy these achievements will create extends far beyond the physical monuments rising from desert sand, establishing precedents for human organization and technical capability that will influence civilizations throughout recorded history. The administrative procedures developed to coordinate massive workforces provide templates for governmental structures that will serve later kingdoms, while engineering techniques pioneered for monumental architecture advanced building practices across the ancient world. Most importantly, the proof that human beings can achieve seemingly impossible goals through careful planning and unwavering dedication inspires future generations to attempt their own transformative projects. The sounds that fill the night air around the pyramid site create an auditory landscape unlike anything heard before in human history. As the rhythm of hammers on copper chisels mingles with the creaking of wooden machinery and the distant chanting of work gangs coordinating their movements through vocal synchronization. These sounds represent the heartbeat of a civilization at its creative peak, their persistence through darkness reflecting determination that refuses to accept the limitations previous generations considered absolute. Vocal and the distant Che-Chi synchrondonating their movements Anting's Korgan of work through refuses its creativization. These sounds represent the heart-reflecting beat of a civilization at peak, their persistence to accept through the darkness, determination T. Had generations consider limitations previous absolute, the underground passages that honeycomb the bedrock beneath the Great Pyramid echo with the sounds of craftsmen who will never see their work completed, their dedication sustained by faith that extends far beyond personal lifespans. In chambers carved from living rock, teams of specialized workers create spaces that must function perfectly for thousands of years. Their precision guided by architectural plans so complex that understanding them requires mathematical knowledge possessed by only the most educated scribes in the kingdom. Amenemheb, a master tunnel engineer whose father and grandfather served pharaohs in similar roles, examines the walls of the descending passage with instruments calibrated to detect variations smaller than a grain of sand. The corridor must maintain its precise angle through hundreds of feet of solid limestone, its alignment calculated to connect with celestial bodies according to religious requirements that demand absolute accuracy. Any deviation from the specified dimensions could compromise the spiritual machinery designed to facilitate the pharaoh's resurrection and eternal rule. The air in these underground workspaces carries the scent of burning oil from countless lamps, their flames providing the only illumination available for work that requires surgical precision. Teams of stone carvers labor in conditions that test both their physical endurance and artistic skill, their copper chisels removing material grain by grain to create surfaces smoother than polished bronze. The hieroglyphic inscriptions they carve serve purposes that transcend human understanding, functioning as magical texts whose power depends on absolute perfection in every symbol and spacing. As dawn breaks across the Nile Valley, bringing another day of impossible achievements made routine through human determination and divine blessing, the Great Pyramid continues its measured ascent toward completion. Each sunrise reveals measurable progress on a project that challenges every assumption about what human beings can accomplish when they unite their efforts in service of goals that transcend individual mortality and regional interests. The morning inspection routines that begin each day of construction involve teams of quality control specialists whose standards would challenge modern builders equipped with precision instruments and mechanical equipment. Master masons examine joints between massive stones, with eyes trained to detect imperfections invisible to casual observation. Their rejection of substandard work ensuring that structures designed to last forever actually possess the durability to fulfill their eternal purpose. Ptahhotep, a senior inspector whose approval is required before any stone can be permanently positioned, carries wooden measuring devices calibrated according to standards maintained in temple workshops throughout the kingdom. His measurements must verify not just dimensional accuracy, but also the subtle variations in surface texture that ensure proper adhesion between blocks weighing several tons each. The limestone mortar used to bind these joints contains ingredients whose properties have been refined through decades of experimentation with materials that must remain stable across geological time periods. The social dynamics that govern these construction sites reflect the complex hierarchies that emerge when thousands of individuals from diverse backgrounds must coordinate their efforts with precision that allows no margin for error. Experienced craftsmen enjoy status comparable to court officials, their expertise acknowledged through better housing, premium food rations, and exemption from the most physically demanding labor. Their knowledge, accumulated through years of working on progressively more ambitious projects, represents intellectual capital more valuable than gold or precious stones. The apprenticeship systems that preserve and transmit this specialized knowledge create educational opportunities unprecedented in human history, offering talented young workers pathways to respected careers that provide alternatives to agricultural labor. Master craftsmen select students based on demonstrated aptitude and dedication rather than family connections. Their choice is guided by understanding that technical knowledge must pass to qualified successors if Egypt's architectural achievements are to continue advancing through successive generations. In workshops scattered throughout the construction complex, artisans pursue specialized tasks that require years of training to master and decades of practice to perfect. Bronze smiths create tools whose cutting edges must maintain their sharpness through prolonged contact with the hardest stones available, their metallurgical knowledge advancing through constant experimentation with alloys and tempering techniques. The implements they produce enable precision work that transforms rough quarry blocks into architectural elements worthy of eternal monuments. The rope and textile specialists who provide essential equipment for moving massive stones work with materials whose strength must exceed anything previously demanded of organic fibers. Master weavers develop new techniques for braiding hemp and flax into cables capable of supporting loads that would snap conventional ropes like brittle reeds, their innovations driven by practical necessity rather than theoretical experimentation. The testing procedures they employ to verify strength and durability establish quality control standards that ensure equipment reliability under extreme operating conditions. As morning heat begins to make outdoor work increasingly difficult, construction activities shift to covered areas where delicate operations can continue regardless of weather conditions. Stone polishers use progressively finer abrasives to achieve surface finishes that rival the smoothness of precious metals, their technique requiring patience and skill that transform ordinary limestone into materials worthy of royal tombs. The polishing compounds they employ contain minerals imported from regions throughout the known world, their effectiveness dependent on chemical properties discovered through generations of artistic experimentation. The pigment preparation workshops that supply materials for tomb decoration represent another category of specialized facility whose existence would have been unimaginable in earlier periods. Master colorists work with ingredients gathered from across the ancient world, their knowledge of chemistry enabling them to create hues that will retain their brilliance in sealed chambers where no natural light will ever penetrate. The recipes they develop require precise combinations of mineral and organic components, their effectiveness tested through procedures that simulate the conditions pigments will encounter in completed tombs. The midday rest periods that provide temporary relief from crushing heat include educational activities that advance the technical knowledge of younger workers while preserving the expertise of master craftsmen for future generations. Informal teaching sessions cover everything from mathematical principles underlying architectural proportions to practical techniques for working different types of stone, their curriculum emerging organically from the questions and challenges that arise during actual construction work. These educational exchanges create intellectual communities that transcend the traditional boundaries between manual labor and scholarly study, their participants developing comprehensive understanding of both theoretical principles and practical applications. Young scribes learn about structural engineering from experienced builders, while master masons gain insight into mathematical relationships that govern architectural harmony. This cross-pollination of knowledge accelerates innovation while ensuring that important discoveries become integrated into standard practice. The afternoon shift brings renewed intensity as work teams race to complete daily quotas before exhaustion makes precision work impossible, their movements choreographed through months of practice that transform individual efforts into coordinated group achievements. The margin for error in these operations remains essentially zero, as mistakes involving stones weighing several tons can prove fatal to multiple workers while destroying weeks of accumulated progress. The communication systems that coordinate these complex operations rely on hand signals and vocal calls adapted specifically for construction environments where normal conversation becomes impossible due to distance and ambient noise. Foremen develop specialized vocabularies that convey precise instructions about load positioning and movement coordination. Their signals understood by workers who may speak different regional dialects but share common technical training. The safety procedures that protect workers during the most dangerous operations reflect hard-won knowledge about human limitations and equipment capabilities under extreme conditions. Teams responsible for positioning capstones at great heights follow protocols developed through experience with accidents that taught bitter lessons about the consequences of overconfidence or inadequate preparation. Their procedures balance efficiency against risk management, recognizing that delays caused by excessive caution remain preferable to catastrophic failures that could kill experienced workers whose skills cannot be easily replaced. The supply management systems that maintain adequate inventories of materials and tools represent logistical achievements that coordinate production and transportation across hundreds of miles. Administrative scribes track consumption rates for everything from copper chisels to linen rope. Their projections enabling procurement officials to anticipate needs and prevent shortages that could halt construction. The accuracy of these calculations depends on mathematical models that account for seasonal variations in both productivity and supply availability. The evening ceremonies that mark the conclusion of each day's work connect individual labor with cosmic purposes that give meaning to exhausting physical effort, their rituals acknowledging both human achievement and divine protection. Priests trained in engineering as well as theology oversee procedures that ensure spiritual requirements receive attention equal to structural necessities, their presence reinforcing the sacred nature of work that prepares the pharaoh's eternal residence. As sunset approaches, the pyramid site takes on an ethereal quality as thousands of oil lamps begin to illuminate work areas where precision tasks will continue through the night. The transition from daylight to artificial illumination requires careful coordination to maintain productivity while preventing accidents that become more likely as visibility decreases and fatigue accumulates among workers who have labored since dawn. The night shift personnel who assume responsibility for continued progress include specialists whose skills are particularly suited to work requiring steady hands and patient concentration. Stone carvers who create hieroglyphic inscriptions prefer the controlled lighting conditions that eliminate the harsh shadows and glare that can interfere with detailed work, while painters find that oil lamp illumination provides more consistent color rendering than the varying natural light of daytime hours. The quality control procedures that govern night operations maintain the same exacting standards applied during daylight hours, their implementation requiring supervisors trained to detect flaws and imperfections under artificial lighting conditions. Master inspectors develop techniques for evaluating work quality using portable lamps and specialized reflecting devices that reveal surface irregularities invisible under normal illumination. Their expertise ensuring that standards never compromise regardless of working conditions. The security arrangements that protect both personnel and materials during vulnerable overnight hours reflect the enormous value concentrated at construction sites, where the accumulated labor of thousands of workers takes physical form in partially completed monuments. Guards patrol according to schedules that provide continuous coverage while accommodating the constant movement of night shift workers and supply personnel, their presence maintaining order while preventing theft or sabotage that could delay construction and waste resources, representing entire communities' collective effort. The sounds that characterize nighttime construction create an auditory landscape unique in human experience. As the rhythm of chisels striking stone mingles with the creaking of wooden machinery, and the distant chanting of work gangs coordinating their movements through vocal synchronization. These nocturnal symphonies reflect the persistence of human ambition that refuses to accept the limitations imposed by darkness or fatigue, their continuation through the night hours demonstrating commitment that transforms impossible dreams into enduring reality. The administrative activities that coordinate overnight operations require scribes trained to maintain accurate records under challenging conditions, their documentation ensuring that progress achieved during night shifts integrates seamlessly with daytime construction activities. The papyrus scrolls they create by oil lamplight contain information so detailed that future administrators can reconstruct not just construction techniques, but the daily routines and personal relationships that enabled such massive undertakings. The tool maintenance workshops that operate around the clock provide essential support for continuous construction operations. They're master craftsmen working in shifts to ensure that sharp chisels and properly calibrated instruments remain available whenever precision work demands their use. The grinding wheels and sharpening stones they employ wear down rapidly under constant use, requiring regular replacement with materials quarried specifically for tool maintenance operations. The medical facilities that provide emergency treatment during night shifts must operate with the same efficiency as their daytime counterparts, while accommodating the additional challenges imposed by limited visibility and reduced staffing levels. Physicians trained in trauma care adapt their techniques for treating injuries that occur when massive stones shift unexpectedly in artificial lighting, their skills enhanced by experience with accidents that teach harsh lessons about human vulnerability in proximity to forces that can crush bone and flesh without warning. The spiritual observances that punctuate night shift activities connect workers with divine protection during hours when darkness amplifies both physical dangers and psychological stresses associated with laboring on projects whose scale can overwhelm individual comprehension. Prayers and incantations, adapted specifically for nocturnal construction, invoke protective deities while reinforcing the sacred purpose that transforms exhausting labor into religious service with eternal significance. As the night progresses toward dawn, bringing another cycle of construction activity that will advance the Great Pyramid measurably closer to completion, the monument itself stands as testimony to human capabilities that transcend the apparent limitations of Bronze Age technology. The geometric precision and massive scale achieved through these nocturnal efforts represent achievements that will inspire wonder and speculation for thousands of years, their permanence offering proof that mortal beings can create works designed to outlast the civilizations that conceived them. The changing of shifts that marks the transition from night to day operations requires coordination procedures that ensure continuous progress while preventing the confusion that could arise when thousands of tired workers transfer responsibilities to fresh teams. Foremen trained in personnel management oversee these transitions with attention to detail that maintains productivity while protecting both outgoing and incoming workers from accidents that become more likely during periods of reduced alertness and changing supervisory authority. Going and incoming workers. Periods of reduced alert that become changingness and supervisory authority, more likely during. From accidents. The dawn chorus that greets workers emerging from underground passages carries sounds impossible to imagine just generations earlier, as copper hammers striking stone create rhythms that synchronize with human heartbeats across the vast construction site. Teams of master craftsmen examine the night's progress with eyes trained to detect variations smaller than papyrus fibers. Their approval required before any work can advance to the next phase of construction that will test both materials and techniques beyond all previous limits. Kayem descends into the king's chamber where absolute darkness reigns, except for carefully positioned oil lamps whose flames must never flicker or smoke in ways that could damage surfaces destined to remain perfect for eternity. The granite walls around him represent achievements that push quarrying and transportation techniques to their breaking points. Each block transported from Aswan quarries hundreds of miles upstream through logistical operations that coordinate thousands of workers across vast distances. The morning inspection reveals joint work so precise that copper knife blades cannot penetrate between adjacent stones, their fitting achieved through grinding and polishing techniques that require weeks of patient labor for each individual block. Master masons who perform this work understand that their efforts create foundations for spiritual machinery designed to function across geological timescales, their precision driven by religious conviction rather than mere aesthetic preference. In workshops carved directly into bedrock beneath the pyramid, artisans pursue tasks that require steadier hands than surgeons and sharper eyes than jewelers. Hieroglyphic carvers create inscriptions whose magical properties depend on absolute accuracy in every stroke and spacing. Their copper tools, guided by knowledge, passed through generations of scribes who understood that even microscopic errors could compromise spells designed to protect the pharaoh's spirit during its journey through afterlife dangers. The pigment specialists who will color these sacred texts work with materials imported from the edges of the known world, their chemical knowledge enabling them to create colors that will glow like captured starlight in chambers where no natural illumination will ever penetrate. Lapis lazuli ground to powder finer than flour provides blues that represent the heavenly realm, while gold leaf, applied with brushes made from single bird feathers, creates surfaces that seem to generate their own light. As morning heat begins its relentless assault on the construction site, work rhythms shift to accommodate temperatures that can kill unprepared workers within hours. The most demanding physical labor moves to shaded areas or underground chambers, where cooler air allows precision tasks to continue, despite surface conditions that transform limestone into furnaces hot enough to blister exposed skin. Water carriers begin their endless ascent up ramp systems that climb hundreds of feet above desert level, their leather containers suspended from wooden yokes that distribute weight across shoulders, strengthened by months of similar labor. The liquid they transport serves purposes beyond simple hydration, keeping stone dust settled during cutting operations and providing the moisture necessary for mortar that must bind massive blocks across millennia of thermal expansion and seismic movement. The mathematical calculations required to coordinate these supply operations challenge scribes whose education includes geometry and arithmetic unknown to previous generations. Consumption rates must account for ambient temperature, work intensity, and the physical demands of laboring at altitudes where desert heat combines with reflected radiation from limestone surfaces to create conditions approaching the limits of human endurance. Seneb examines a granite block destined for the pharaoh's sarcophagus, his experienced hands detecting imperfections invisible to untrained observers. The stone must meet tolerances that leave no room for approximation, each surface polished to smoothness that rivals precious metals, while maintaining structural integrity under loads that will test the material's absolute limits. His workshop contains tools that represent generations of accumulated knowledge about working stone, their bronze edges maintained to surgical sharpness by specialists who understand that perfection cannot be achieved through inferior implements. The sound of chisels striking granite creates percussion that echoes through underground chambers like distant thunder, each strike calculated to remove precisely the amount of material necessary without creating fractures that could compromise structural integrity. Workers who perform this delicate operation develop intuitive understanding of stone grain and stress patterns, their movements guided by knowledge that combines practical experience with almost supernatural sensitivity to material properties. The ramp systems that enable massive stones to reach impossible heights represent engineering achievements that coordinate wooden frameworks with natural bedrock formations, their design optimized to provide maximum mechanical advantage while maintaining structural stability under loads that stress materials beyond normal breaking points. Teams of engineers inspect these temporary structures constantly, their vigilance preventing catastrophic failures that could destroy months of accumulated progress while killing dozens of experienced workers. In the permanent quarters that house skilled craftsmen whose expertise cannot be replaced, social hierarchies emerge based on competence rather than birth, creating opportunities for advancement that previous generations never imagined possible. Master masons enjoy privileges comparable to court officials, their knowledge valued more highly than inherited wealth or family connections. Young apprentices compete for training opportunities that offer pathways to respected careers, their ambition driving them to volunteer for dangerous assignments that demonstrate courage and dedication. The midday break brings temporary relief from crushing heat, but precision work continues in underground chambers, where controlled conditions allow delicate operations to proceed, regardless of surface temperatures. Stone polishers use progressively finer abrasives to achieve finishes smoother than silk. Their technique requiring patience that transforms ordinary limestone into materials worthy of divine architecture. The administrative complex that coordinates construction activities operates with efficiency that rivals modern project management systems. Its scribes maintaining records that track everything from individual worker productivity to precise inventories of materials stored in dozens of supply depots scattered throughout the kingdom. The papyrus scrolls they create contain mathematical calculations so complex that understanding them requires education available to only the most privileged members of society. Katie reviews reports detailing progress on interior passages whose complexity challenges the architectural knowledge of Egypt's most learned engineers. The ascending passage, with its precisely calculated angle and perfectly smooth walls, requires construction techniques that push existing capabilities toward their absolute limits. Every measurement must be verified through multiple independent calculations, every joint inspected with instruments calibrated to detect variations smaller than grain boundaries in papyrus fibers. The quality control procedures that govern this work establish standards that seem almost supernatural given the tools available to these ancient builders. Surfaces that will remain hidden for thousands of years receive attention equal to elements visible to contemporary observers, their perfection driven by religious conviction that demands excellence regardless of whether human eyes will ever witness the achievement. The afternoon shift brings renewed intensity as temperatures begin their gradual decline toward evening levels that allow full-scale construction activities to resume. Teams of 20 workers coordinate their movements to guide stones weighing several tons along pathways whose angles have been calculated to provide optimal mechanical advantage while maintaining safety margins that account for human fatigue and equipment limitations. The foremen who direct these operations possess knowledge that combines practical engineering with intuitive understanding of group psychology under extreme stress. They judge worker fatigue levels with glances that reveal years of experience managing teams whose coordination can mean the difference between spectacular achievement and catastrophic failure. Their decisions affect not just immediate productivity, but long-term morale among workers whose dedication transforms impossible dreams into permanent reality. Religious ceremonies that mark significant milestones in construction progress involve entire communities in celebrations that reinforce collective identity while demonstrating the kingdom's prosperity to foreign observers. Priests trained in both theology and structural engineering oversee rituals that ensure spiritual requirements receive attention equal to practical necessities, their presence connecting individual labor with cosmic purposes that give meaning to exhausting physical effort. The evening routines that conclude each day include maintenance activities essential for continued progress, their careful attention to seemingly minor details, reflecting understanding that small oversights can cascade into major delays affecting thousands of workers. Tool sharpeners work through the night, restoring cutting edges dulled by contact with the hardest available stones, their expertise enabling the precision required for joints that must remain perfect across geological time periods. As stars begin appearing in darkening skies above the construction site, oil lamps throughout the complex create illumination that transforms the pyramid into a beacon visible for miles across the desert. The night shift assumes responsibility for continued progress, their work proceeding under conditions that test both technical skill and physical endurance, while maintaining standards that never compromise, regardless of lighting or temperature conditions. The security arrangements that protect overnight operations must balance accessibility for legitimate workers against prevention of theft or sabotage that could compromise materials representing entire communities' collective labor. Guards patrol according to schedules that accommodate constant movement of personnel and supplies while maintaining vigilance against threats that could delay construction or waste resources whose value exceeds the annual production of entire provinces. Underground chambers echo with sounds of craftsmen, creating spaces that must function perfectly for thousands of years. Their dedication sustained by faith in purposes that extend far beyond individual lifespans. Teams of specialized workers carve passages through solid limestone, using techniques that achieve tolerances rivaling modern precision manufacturing. Their accuracy guided by architectural plans so complex that understanding them requires mathematical knowledge possessed by only the most educated scribes. The medical facilities that serve night shift personnel operate with the same efficiency as daytime counterparts, while accommodating additional challenges imposed by artificial lighting and reduced staffing. Physicians adapt trauma treatment techniques for accidents involving massive stones in conditions where normal visibility becomes impossible. Their skills enhanced by experience with injuries unique to construction environments that push human capabilities beyond all reasonable limits. The legacy these achievements create extends far beyond physical monuments rising from desert sand, establishing precedents for human organization that will influence civilizations throughout recorded history. Administrative procedures developed to coordinate massive workforces provide templates for governmental structures, while engineering techniques pioneered for monumental architecture advance building practices across the ancient world. As another night progresses toward dawn, bringing fresh cycles of impossible achievements, made routine through human determination and divine blessing, the Great Pyramid continues its measured ascent toward completion. Each sunrise reveals measurable progress on a project that challenges every assumption about what mortals can accomplish when they unite their efforts in service of goals that transcend individual mortality and transform temporary lives into permanent monuments to human potential. The changing of shifts that marks transition from nocturnal to diurnal operations requires coordination procedures that maintain continuous progress while preventing confusion that could arise when thousands of tired workers transfer responsibilities to fresh teams. The seamless nature of these transitions reflects organizational sophistication that enables round-the-clock construction activities, while protecting both outgoing and incoming personnel from accidents that become more likely during periods when alertness decreases and supervisory authority changes hands. The sound of bronze hammers striking copper chisels creates rhythms that will echo through history long after the last worker has laid down his tools, their percussion marking humanity's first successful attempt to build structures designed to outlast the civilizations that conceived them. These monuments will stand as permanent testimony to the extraordinary achievements possible when human intelligence, determination, and collective effort unite in pursuit of goals that seemed impossible until the moment they became eternal reality carved in stone beneath the desert stars. Possible when human intelligence, determination, and collective effort unite in testimony to the extraordinary to outlast the civilizations that conceive tools, their percussion successful pursuit of goals that seemed structures design monuments attempt to build's first impossible until marking humanity will stand as permanent them. These the achievements moment eternal they, became in the desert stars reality carved stone beneath. The morning mist rises from the Nile as Khaemwaset awakens in his modest dwelling near the pyramid complex. His sleep interrupted by dreams of stones floating through air like feathers. Outside his window, the sounds of early preparation echo across the settlement, as thousands of workers begin another day that will push the boundaries of human achievement into realms that previous generations considered impossible. The air carries the scent of baking bread mixed with limestone dust, creating an atmosphere unique to this place, where ordinary people participate in extraordinary endeavors. Walking through the narrow streets toward the construction site, Khaemwaset passes workshops already humming with activity despite the early hour. Master toolmakers examine copper chisels with the intensity of physicians studying patients, their trained eyes detecting microscopic flaws that could compromise precision work, requiring surgical accuracy. The bronze implements they create represent technological marvels that enable craftsmen to shape stone with control that transforms brute force into artistic expression. their cutting edges maintained through techniques that push metallurgy beyond all previous limits. At the quarry foreman's station, teams of workers gather around wooden tablets covered with hieroglyphic notations that specify the day's objectives in mathematical terms incomprehensible to earlier generations. Each notation represents calculations that account for stone weight, transportation logistics, and structural requirements that must remain perfect across geological time periods. The precision demanded by these specifications requires coordination between hundreds of individuals whose specialized knowledge combines to achieve results that individual effort could never accomplish. The limestone blocks that emerge from these quarries bear witness to extraction techniques that balance efficiency with quality standards unprecedented in human history. Master stonecutters examine rock faces with eyes trained to detect grain patterns that determine whether extracted material can withstand the stresses of transportation and permanent installation in structures designed to endure forever. Their selections require understanding of geological forces that operate across millennia, their expertise enabling them to identify stones capable of bearing loads that would crush inferior materials. As morning progresses toward the brutal heat that characterizes desert construction conditions, work rhythms adapt to environmental challenges that test human endurance while maintaining productivity levels necessary for monumental achievement. Water carriers begin their endless ascent up ramp systems that spiral hundreds of feet above ground level, their leather containers providing hydration essential for workers laboring under conditions that approach the limits of physiological tolerance. The ramp systems themselves represent engineering marvels that coordinate massive wooden frameworks with natural bedrock formations, their angles calculated to provide optimal mechanical advantage while maintaining structural integrity under loads that stress materials beyond normal breaking points. Teams of engineers inspect these temporary structures with vigilance that prevents catastrophic failures capable of destroying months of accumulated progress while claiming the lives of irreplaceable skilled workers. Amenhotep supervises the positioning of granite blocks destined for interior chambers, his commands coordinated through hand signals that convey precise instructions about load placement and movement timing. The margin for error in these operations approaches zero, as mistakes involving stones weighing several tons can prove fatal to multiple workers while compromising structural elements that must remain stable for thousands of years. The mathematical knowledge required to coordinate these complex movements challenges scribes whose education encompasses geometric principles unknown to previous civilizations. Their calculations must account for weight distribution, leverage mechanics, and safety factors that prevent accidents while enabling the precise positioning required for joints that will support enormous loads across geological timescales. In underground workshops carved directly from bedrock, artisans pursue tasks requiring steadier hands than surgeons and more patient concentration than astronomers mapping stellar movements. Hieroglyphic carvers create inscriptions whose magical properties depend on absolute accuracy in every symbol and spacing. Their copper tools guided by knowledge that combines artistic training with religious understanding of textual requirements for spiritual protection. The pigments these artists employ represent chemical achievements that enable colors to retain their brilliance in sealed chambers, where natural light will never penetrate. Master colorists work with ingredients gathered from across the known world, their recipes requiring precise combinations of mineral and organic components whose effectiveness depends on understanding properties that won't be scientifically explained for thousands of years. As midday heat transforms the construction site into a furnace that can kill unprepared workers within hours, activities shift to shaded areas and underground chambers where cooler conditions allow precision work to continue despite surface temperatures that make limestone too hot to touch. The most demanding physical operations move to covered workshops where master craftsmen pursue tasks requiring months of patient labor to complete individual elements. Stone polishers use progressively finer abrasives to achieve surface finishes smoother than precious metals, their technique transforming rough quarry blocks into architectural elements worthy of divine residences. The polishing compounds they employ contain minerals imported from regions throughout the ancient world. Their effectiveness tested through procedures that simulate conditions these surfaces will encounter in completed monuments. The quality control systems that govern every aspect of construction work establish standards that seem almost supernatural given the tools available to these ancient builders. Each stone block receives multiple inspections during quarrying, transport, and installation phases, with detailed records maintained of any modifications required to meet specifications that tolerate no deviation from perfect dimensional accuracy. Seneb examines joints between massive limestone blocks, with instruments calibrated to detect variations smaller than papyrus fibers. His approval required before construction can advance to subsequent phases that will test both materials and techniques beyond all previous limits. The mortar used to bind these joints contains ingredients whose properties have been refined through decades of experimentation, with compounds that must remain stable across millennia of thermal expansion and seismic activity. The social dynamics that emerge within the workers' villages reflect hierarchies based on competence rather than inherited status, creating opportunities for advancement that previous generations never imagined possible. Skilled masons enjoy privileges comparable to court officials, their expertise acknowledged through better housing, premium food rations, and exemption from the most physically demanding labour assignments. Apprenticeship programs offer talented young workers pathways to respected careers that provide alternatives to agricultural labour, their selection based on demonstrated aptitude rather than family connections. Master craftsmen choose students whose dedication and natural ability suggest potential for mastering skills that require years of training to acquire and decades of practice to perfect. The evening routines that conclude each day of construction include ceremonies that connect individual labour with cosmic purposes, their rituals acknowledging both human achievement and divine protection during work that prepares eternal residences for god-kings whose successful transition to the afterlife ensures continued prosperity for the entire kingdom. Priests trained in engineering as well as theology oversee procedures that ensure spiritual requirements receive attention equal to structural necessities. As darkness settles over the construction site, oil lamps throughout the complex create illumination that enables precision work to continue regardless of natural lighting conditions. Night shift personnel assume responsibility for tasks requiring steady hands and patient concentration, their skills particularly suited for operations where controlled artificial lighting provides advantages over the varying natural illumination of daylight hours. Underground chambers echo with sounds of craftsmen creating spaces that must function perfectly for thousands of years, their dedication sustained by faith in purposes that extend far beyond individual lifespans. Teams of specialized workers carve passages through solid limestone, using techniques that achieve tolerances rivaling modern precision manufacturing, their accuracy guided by architectural plans so complex that understanding them requires mathematical knowledge, possessed by only the most educated scribes in the kingdom. The medical facilities that provide emergency treatment during night operations must maintain the same efficiency as daytime counterparts, while accommodating additional challenges imposed by artificial lighting and reduced staffing levels. Physicians adapt trauma care techniques for accidents involving massive stones in conditions where normal visibility becomes compromised. Their skills enhanced by experience, treating injuries unique to construction environments that push human capabilities beyond reasonable limits. The security arrangements protecting overnight activities balance accessibility for legitimate workers against prevention of theft or sabotage that could compromise materials representing entire communities' collective labor. Guards patrol according to schedules that accommodate constant movement of personnel and supplies while maintaining vigilance against threats capable of delaying construction or wasting resources whose value exceeds annual production of entire provinces. The tool maintenance workshops that operate continuously provide essential support for round-the-clock construction operations. Their master craftsmen working in shifts to ensure sharp chisels and properly calibrated instruments remain available whenever precision work demands their use. The grinding wheels and sharpening stones they employ deteriorate rapidly under constant use, requiring regular replacement with materials quarried specifically for tool maintenance purposes. The administrative activities that coordinate overnight operations require scribes trained to maintain accurate records under challenging conditions. Their documentation ensuring that progress achieved during night shifts integrates seamlessly with daytime construction activities. The papyrus scrolls they create by oil lamp illumination contain mathematical calculations so detailed that future administrators will be able to reconstruct not just construction techniques, but the daily routines and personal relationships that enabled such massive undertakings. As another night progresses toward dawn, bringing fresh cycles of impossible achievements made routine through human determination and divine blessing, the Great Pyramid continues its measured ascent toward completion. Each sunrise reveals measurable progress on a project that challenges every assumption about what mortals can accomplish when they unite their efforts in service of goals that transcend individual mortality and regional interests. The changing of shifts that marks transition from nocturnal to diurnal operations requires coordination procedures that maintain continuous progress while preventing confusion that could arise when thousands of tired workers transfer responsibilities to fresh teams. Foremen trained in personnel management oversee these transitions with attention to detail that maintains productivity while protecting both outgoing and incoming workers from accidents that become more likely during periods of reduced alertness. The sounds that characterize early morning construction create auditory landscapes unique in human experience, as copper hammers striking stone create rhythms that synchronize with human heartbeats across the vast construction site. These percussive patterns reflect the persistence of human ambition that refuses to accept limitations imposed by darkness, fatigue, or environmental conditions that would have defeated previous generations attempting similar achievements. In workshops scattered throughout the complex, specialists continue pursuing tasks that require knowledge, spanning multiple disciplines previously considered unrelated. Bronzesmiths collaborate with mathematicians to create tools whose cutting angles optimize material removal rates, while astronomers work with architects to ensure passage alignments achieve religious requirements demanding perfect celestial coordination. The educational exchanges that occur during shift transitions create intellectual communities transcending traditional boundaries between manual labor and scholarly study. Young scribes learn structural engineering principles from experienced builders, while master masons gain insights into mathematical relationships governing architectural harmony. This cross-pollination of knowledge accelerates innovation, while ensuring important discoveries become integrated into standard construction practices. The supply chains that feed materials to construction sites represent logistical achievements coordinating production and transportation across hundreds of miles. Administrative scribes track consumption rates for everything from copper chisels to linen rope, their projections enabling procurement officials to anticipate needs and prevent shortages capable of halting construction operations that employ thousands of workers simultaneously. The religious observances that punctuate work activities connect participants with divine purposes that give meaning to exhausting physical effort, their ceremonies reinforcing the sacred nature of labor that transforms temporary human lives into permanent monuments designed to endure across geological time periods. These spiritual practices aren't mere formalities, but essential elements of worldviews that find eternal significance in seemingly mundane daily tasks. The technological innovations emerging from pyramid construction find applications throughout Egyptian society, transforming everything from domestic architecture to agricultural practices. Mathematical principles developed for achieving perfect proportions influence temple and palace design, while engineering techniques pioneered for moving massive stones improve transportation systems that benefit commercial and military operations across the kingdom. The cultural confidence that emerges from these monumental achievements permeates every aspect of Old Kingdom society, inspiring artists and writers to create works reflecting similar ambitions for permanence and perfection. Literature produced during this period explores themes of immortality and divine purpose that mirror religious beliefs underlying pyramid construction, while artistic techniques developed for tomb decoration achieve sophistication that won't be surpassed for thousands of years. As morning light begins illuminating the pyramid site, revealing another day of progress toward completion of humanity's greatest architectural achievement, workers throughout the complex understand they participate in something that will outlast empires and civilizations. Their individual contributions become permanent elements of monuments designed to demonstrate that mortal beings can create works intended to endure forever, transforming temporary lives into eternal testimonies to human potential when intelligence, determination, and collective effort unite in pursuit of seemingly impossible goals. Intelligence pursuit of seemingly testimonies to human potential when impossible goals. Determination and collective effort unite in. The pre-dawn air carries a stillness that will soon be shattered by the awakening of humanity's most ambitious endeavor. In the workers' quarters near the Great Pyramid, thousands of men stir from sleep that has been filled with dreams of soaring stone and impossible angles reaching toward the heavens. Their calloused hands reach instinctively for tools that have become extensions of their bodies, copper implements that gleam dully in the first light, filtering through narrow windows cut into mud brick walls. Amenemhab rises from his sleeping mat, his joints protesting after another day of guiding massive granite blocks through passages so narrow that a single miscalculation could trap the stone forever. Around him, fellow workers begin their morning rituals with the quiet efficiency of men who understand that every moment of daylight must be maximized for tasks that push human capability beyond all reasonable limits. The sound of leather sandals on stone floors creates a gentle percussion that will soon be overwhelmed by the symphony of construction that defines their lives. Walking through the settlement toward the pyramid complex, Amenemhab passes workshops where master craftsmen are already examining their tools with the intensity of priests preparing sacred vessels. The copper chisels that will shape stone today must meet standards that tolerate no imperfection. Their edges maintained through grinding techniques that require knowledge passed down through generations of metalworkers who understand that precision cannot be approximated or rushed. In the rope-making facility, teams of specialists inspect the thick cables that will bear loads exceeding anything previously imagined in human construction. Each strand must be tested for strength that accounts for stress factors no earlier generation ever needed to consider, their quality determining whether massive stones will rise safely to impossible heights or crash down through multiple levels of scaffolding and human activity below. The mathematical calculations required to coordinate these morning preparations challenge scribes whose education encompasses principles that push the boundaries of known arithmetic and geometry. Their papyrus scrolls contain notations that specify weight distributions, leverage ratios, and safety margins for operations that will test both materials and techniques beyond all precedent. Every calculation must account for variables that range from wind resistance at great heights to the thermal expansion of different materials under desert heat. As sunrise approaches, the quarry sites that supply the endless stream of limestone blocks begin their daily transformation from quiet stone faces into scenes of controlled chaos. Master stonecutters examine rock formations with eyes trained to detect grain patterns that determine whether extracted material can withstand the journey to Giza and the enormous pressures it will bear for eternity. Their selections require geological knowledge that enables them to identify stones capable of maintaining structural integrity across millennia of environmental stress. The extraction process itself represents a triumph of technique over brute force, as teams of workers coordinate their movements to free blocks weighing several tons without creating fractures that could compromise their use in structures demanding absolute perfection. The copper tools they employ must be resharpened constantly, their cutting edges dulled by contact with limestone that seems determined to resist human ambition through sheer hardness and resistance to shaping. At the harbour facilities where finished blocks begin their journey downstream to the pyramid site, Boats designed specifically for these unprecedented loads await their daily cargo. The vessels themselves represent engineering marvels, their hulls reinforced with cedar timbers imported from Lebanese forests, and their steering mechanisms adapted for navigation under conditions that would sink conventional craft. Experienced pilots study water levels and current patterns with knowledge gained through months of transporting increasingly massive stones, their expertise now essential for operations that coordinate the efforts of thousands of workers across vast distances. The journey downstream reveals a landscape transformed by ambition into something that defies natural order. Villages that once existed in relative isolation now serve as supply stations for the greatest construction project in human history. Their granaries storing reserves calculated to feed massive workforces through seasons when agricultural production cannot meet the combined demands of farmers and pyramid builders. Administrative centers coordinate the movement of resources with precision that enables materials quarried hundreds of miles away to arrive exactly when needed at construction sites where delays could affect the productivity of entire work gangs. Upon reaching Giza, the limestone blocks encounter ramp systems that represent perhaps the most impressive engineering achievements of the entire project. These temporary structures spiral upward like the backbone of some impossible creature, their wooden frameworks designed to provide mechanical advantage that allows human muscle to accomplish what would otherwise require divine intervention. Teams of engineers inspect these ramps constantly, their vigilance preventing catastrophic failures that could destroy months of accumulated progress while claiming the lives of irreplaceable skilled workers. The ascent begins with teams of 20 men coordinating their movements to guide stones along pathways whose angles have been calculated to optimize the balance between mechanical advantage and structural stability. The margin for error in these operations approaches zero, as the enormous weights involved can crush human bodies without warning, while the heights reached make recovery from mistakes impossible. Foremen who direct these movements possess knowledge that combines practical engineering with intuitive understanding of group psychology under extreme stress. As blocks reach their designated positions, hundreds of feet above ground level, master masons assume responsibility for achieving the precision that will make these monuments endure for thousands of years. Their work requires tolerances that seem almost supernatural given the tools available, with joints between massive stones fitted so perfectly that copper knife blades cannot penetrate between adjacent surfaces. The techniques they employ transform rough quarry blocks into architectural elements whose accuracy rivals modern precision manufacturing. In underground chambers carved directly from bedrock, different teams pursue tasks that require steadier hands than surgeons and more patient concentration than astronomers mapping stellar movements. The King's Chamber, with its precisely angled ceiling and perfectly smooth granite walls, demands construction techniques that push existing capabilities toward their absolute limits. Every surface must meet specifications that account for loads these materials will bear across geological time periods. Their perfection driven by religious conviction that transforms physical labor into sacred service. The hieroglyphic inscriptions that will decorate these chambers require artisans whose skill transcends mere craftsmanship to approach divine inspiration. Each symbol must be carved with absolute accuracy, as these texts serve purposes that extend far beyond human understanding, functioning as magical formulas designed to protect the pharaoh's spirit during its journey through afterlife dangers. The copper tools used for this delicate work must maintain edges sharp enough to achieve consistent depth and spacing across thousands of individual characters. Midday heat transforms the construction site into conditions that test human endurance while demanding continued precision in work that cannot tolerate approximation or compromise. Most heavy lifting operations cease during the hottest hours, but detail work continues in shaded areas where master craftsmen pursue tasks requiring months of patient labor to complete individual elements. Stone polishers use progressively finer abrasives to achieve surface finishes smoother than precious metals, their technique transforming ordinary limestone into materials worthy of divine architecture. The water distribution system that sustains this massive workforce during these brutal conditions represents another organizational marvel. Its efficiency depending on careful calculation of consumption rates and transportation logistics that account for the enormous energy expenditure required to carry liquid up-ramps, climbing hundreds of feet above desert level. Teams of water carriers develop the physical endurance of trained athletes, their daily ascents and descents conditioning them for loads that would exhaust ordinary individuals within hours. Food preparation facilities operate with industrial efficiency to maintain adequate nutrition for thousands of workers, performing physical tasks that push human capabilities to their limits. Master bakers work in shifts to ensure constant supplies of fresh bread, their ovens consuming grain shipped from agricultural regions throughout the kingdom according to supply schedules that anticipate consumption months in advance. The logistics required to feed this workforce demonstrate mathematical capabilities that enable administrators to coordinate complex operations across vast distances. Medical facilities established specifically for construction injuries represent advances in trauma care that emerge directly from the unique challenges of maintaining worker health under conditions where massive stones and wooden machinery create dangers unknown in normal occupations. Physicians adapt battlefield medicine techniques for accidents involving loads that can crush bone and flesh without warning, while specialists in occupational health develop treatments for conditions resulting from prolonged exposure to stone dust and repetitive physical stress. As afternoon temperatures begin their gradual decline toward evening levels that allow full-scale operations to resume, the pyramid site transforms back into the scene of coordinated movement that characterizes peak construction activity. Teams that rested during the hottest hours return to tasks requiring the kind of precision that makes monuments endure for millennia. Their renewed energy channeled through procedures refined by months of experience working under conditions that would have defeated previous generations. The quality control systems that govern every aspect of this work establish standards that seem almost modern in their comprehensiveness and documentation. Each stone block receives multiple inspections during quarrying, transport, and installation phases, with detailed records maintained of any modifications required to meet specifications that tolerate no deviation from perfect dimensional accuracy. Master inspectors whose approval is required before construction can advance to subsequent phases examine joints between massive blocks with instruments calibrated to detect variations smaller than grain boundaries in papyrus fibers. Religious ceremonies that mark significant construction milestones involve entire communities in celebrations that reinforce collective identity while demonstrating the kingdom's organizational capabilities to foreign observers. Priests trained in both theology and structural engineering oversee rituals that ensure spiritual requirements receive attention equal to practical necessities. Their presence, connecting individual labor with cosmic purposes that give meaning to exhausting physical effort. Evening routines include maintenance activities essential for continued progress. Their careful attention to seemingly minor details, reflecting understanding that small oversights can cascade into major delays affecting thousands of workers. Tool sharpeners work through the night, restoring cutting edges dulled by contact with the hardest available stones. Their expertise enabling the precision required for joints that must remain perfect across geological time periods. As stars appear in darkening skies above the construction site, oil lamps throughout the complex create illumination that enables precision work to continue regardless of natural lighting conditions. Night shift personnel assume responsibility for tasks requiring steady hands and patient concentration. Their skills particularly suited for operations where controlled artificial lighting provides advantages over the varying natural illumination of daylight hours. The transition from day to night operations requires coordination procedures that maintain continuous progress while preventing confusion that could arise when thousands of tired workers transfer responsibilities to fresh teams. Foremen trained in personnel management oversee these changes with attention to detail that maintains productivity while protecting both outgoing and incoming workers from accidents that become more likely during periods of reduced alertness and changing supervisory authority. Underground chambers echo with sounds of craftsmen creating spaces that must function perfectly for thousands of years. Their dedication sustained by faith in purposes that extend far beyond individual lifespans. Teams of specialized workers carve passages through solid limestone, using techniques that achieve tolerances rivaling modern precision manufacturing. Their accuracy guided by architectural plans so complex that understanding them requires mathematical knowledge possessed by only the most educated scribes in the kingdom. Security arrangements protecting overnight activities must balance accessibility for legitimate workers against prevention of theft or sabotage that could compromise materials representing entire communities' collective labor. Guards patrol according to schedules that accommodate constant movement of personnel and supplies, while maintaining vigilance against threats capable of delaying construction or wasting resources whose value exceeds the annual production of entire provinces. The sounds that characterize nighttime construction create auditory landscapes unique in human experience, as copper hammers striking stone create rhythms that synchronize with human heartbeats across the vast construction site. These nocturnal symphonies reflect the persistence of human ambition that refuses to accept limitations imposed by darkness or fatigue. Their continuation through the night hours demonstrating commitment that transforms impossible dreams into enduring reality. Administrative activities that coordinate overnight operations require scribes trained to maintain accurate records under challenging conditions. Their documentation ensuring that progress achieved during night shifts integrates seamlessly with daytime construction activities. The papyrus scrolls they create by oil lamp illumination contain mathematical calculations so detailed that future administrators will be able to reconstruct not just construction techniques, but the daily routines and personal relationships that enabled such massive undertakings. As another night progresses toward dawn, bringing fresh cycles of impossible achievements made routine through human determination and divine blessing, the Great Pyramid continues its measured ascent toward completion. Each sunrise reveals measurable progress on a project that challenges every assumption about what mortals can accomplish when they unite their efforts in service of goals that transcend individual mortality and regional interests, their collective achievements standing as permanent testimony to human potential when intelligence, determination, and faith combine in pursuit of eternal monuments that will inspire wonder for thousands of years to come. Its measured ascent toward completion, Chinese and personal relationships that enabled such massivation contain mathematical calculations so detailed that future trained to maintain accurate records under challenging conditions. Activities that coordinate overnight operations require scribe service of goals that transcend individual mortality. Sunrise reveals measurable progress on a project progresses toward dawn, bringing fresh cycles can accomplish when they unite their efforts in of impossible achievements, made routine through human determination undertakings. As another night that challenges every assumption about what mortals and divine blessing, the Great Pyramid continues collective and regional interests, their achievement to human potential when intelligence, determination, standing testimony as permanent and faith combine monuments in pursuit of eternal that of years to come, will inspire for thousands wonder. The final dawn of our journey arrives as the Great Pyramid nears its completion in the year 2566 BCE, its limestone courses rising toward a capstone that will crown humanity's first monument designed to touch the realm of the gods. In the workshops surrounding the monument, master craftsmen apply the finishing touches that will transform rough stone into surfaces worthy of eternal contemplation. Their patient labor, creating perfection that will endure long after the civilization that conceived it has passed into memory. Khemwaset awakens for what may be among his final mornings as a pyramid builder, his weathered hands reaching for tools that have become extensions of his spirit during years of service to this impossible dream. The oil lamp beside his sleeping mat illuminates papyrus scrolls covered with calculations that represent the culmination of mathematical knowledge, accumulated through decades of pushing stone and bronze beyond their apparent limitations. Today's work will position the final blocks of the pharaoh's burial chamber, completing spaces designed to function as resurrection machines for a god-king whose successful transition to the afterlife ensures Egypt's continued prosperity. Walking through the settlement for perhaps the last time, he passes workshops where artisans apply gold leaf to surfaces that will never again know sunlight, their brushstrokes guided by a religious conviction that demands perfection, regardless of whether human eyes will witness the achievement. The hieroglyphic inscriptions they complete serve purposes that transcend mortal understanding, functioning as magical texts whose power depends on absolute accuracy in every symbol and spacing. Master colorists mix pigments that will glow like captured starlight in chambers, where darkness reigns eternal, their recipes preserving brilliance across millennia through chemical knowledge that won't be scientifically explained for thousands of years. The capstone itself represents the ultimate achievement in precision stoneworking, its pyramidal form requiring angles calculated with astronomical accuracy to align with celestial bodies according to religious requirements that demand perfect coordination between earthly architecture and cosmic forces. Teams of master masons examine its surfaces with instruments calibrated to detect variations smaller than papyrus fibers, their approval essential before this crowning element can assume its eternal position atop humanity's greatest architectural achievement. The ramp systems that have enabled stones to reach impossible heights now face their supreme test as the capstone begins its final ascent toward the pyramid's apex. The wooden frameworks that support this operation must bear loads that stress engineering capabilities to their absolute limits, while teams of workers coordinate movements requiring precision that allows no margin for error at heights where mistakes become irreversible. Foremen who direct these operations understand they participate in a moment that will be remembered for thousands of years, their decisions affecting not just immediate success, but the permanent legacy of an entire civilization. As morning progresses toward the ceremony that will mark completion of the pharaoh's eternal residence, priests trained in both theology and architecture oversee final inspections that ensure every element meets spiritual as well as structural requirements. The passages that connect burial chambers with star shafts must maintain perfect alignment with constellations, whose movements govern the pharaoh's journey through afterlife challenges, their accuracy representing the culmination of astronomical knowledge accumulated through generations of celestial observation. The interior chambers themselves stand as testimonies to human capability that transcends the apparent limitations of copper tools and bronze implements. Granite walls, polished to mirror smoothness, reflect oil lamp flames that will soon be extinguished forever, their surfaces prepared to receive the golden sarcophagus that will house the pharaoh's mummified remains throughout eternity. The hieroglyphic inscriptions covering these walls create magical texts whose power will protect the royal spirit during its navigation of afterlife dangers, each symbol carved with precision that transforms ordinary stone into sacred scripture. The final positioning of architectural elements requires coordination between hundreds of specialists whose expertise encompasses everything from mathematical calculation to religious ritual. Master engineers verify that structural loads distribute properly across foundations designed to bear unimaginable weights, while priest astronomers confirm that celestial alignments achieve the accuracy necessary for proper spiritual function. The convergence of these different knowledge systems represents intellectual achievement that won't be equaled for centuries. As the capstone reaches its destined position atop the pyramid's apex, thousands of workers throughout the complex pause in their activities to witness the completion of humanity's first successful attempt to build for eternity. The geometric perfection achieved through their collective efforts stands as proof that mortal beings can create works designed to outlast the civilizations that conceived them, transforming temporary human lives into permanent monuments to possibilities that seemed impossible until the moment they became eternal reality. The ceremonies that mark this achievement involve entire communities in celebrations that acknowledge both human accomplishment and divine blessing. They're rituals connecting individual contributions with cosmic purposes that give meaning to years of exhausting labor. Priests offer prayers that ensure the pyramid's spiritual functions will operate properly throughout the thousands of years it will serve as the pharaoh's resurrection machine, while administrators record the completion of construction phases that have consumed the efforts of multiple generations. The workers who have dedicated years of their lives to this project understand they have participated in something that transcends ordinary human experience, their individual skills and collective determination combining to achieve results that will inspire wonder and speculation for millennia. The techniques they have developed, the knowledge they have accumulated, and the standards they have established will influence architectural practices throughout the ancient world, while providing templates for achievements that future civilizations will attempt when they dare to build their own monuments to human ambition. As evening settles over the completed pyramid, its perfect geometry stands silhouetted against stars, whose movements the structure will track for thousands of years. The monument rises from desert sand like a mountain crafted by divine hands, its limestone surfaces reflecting moonlight with brilliance that makes it visible for miles across the Nile Valley. Inside its chambers, oil lamps burn for the final time before being extinguished forever, their flames illuminating spaces prepared to receive the pharaoh's eternal rest. The legacy of this achievement extends far beyond the physical monument itself, establishing precedents for human organization, technical innovation, and cultural ambition that will influence civilizations throughout recorded history. The administrative systems developed to coordinate massive workforces, the engineering techniques pioneered for monumental construction, and the artistic standards achieved through years of patient refinement create foundations that will support Egyptian civilization for thousands of years, while inspiring later cultures to attempt their own transformative projects. The Old Kingdom that enabled this unprecedented achievement stands at the pinnacle of its power and creativity, its people united by shared participation in accomplishments that seemed impossible until they became permanent testimony to human potential. The pyramid that now dominates the Giza Plateau represents more than royal ambition or religious devotion, embodying the collective capability of a society that dared to build for eternity and possess the knowledge, organization, and determination necessary to transform audacious vision into enduring reality. As our peaceful journey through these ancient sands draws toward its close, the sounds of construction that have filled the air for decades gradually fade into the silence of completed achievement. The workers who created this wonder return to their villages carrying memories of participation in humanity's greatest architectural accomplishment, their individual contributions becoming part of a story that will inspire future generations to reach beyond apparent limitations in pursuit of their own impossible dreams. The Great Pyramid stands completed under desert stars, its perfect proportions and massive scale representing proof that human beings can achieve anything they dare to imagine, when intelligence, determination, and collective effort unite in service of goals that transcend individual mortality. This monument to eternal ambition will endure through the rise and fall of empires, bearing witness to the extraordinary capabilities that emerge when ordinary people unite in pursuit of extraordinary achievements. Their legacy carved in stone that will outlast the ages and continue inspiring wonder long after the civilization that created it has passed into the gentle embrace of history's eternal sleep. The This Rise Effort Unite monument to eternal that transcend individual mortality. Ambition will endure through, in service of goals, determination, and collective to imagine when intelligence witness to, thus the ages extraordinary and fall of empt in stone that will outliers, bearing people unite in pursuit of extraordinary carved capabilities, that after the civilization that create inspiring wonder long emerge, When ordinary, their legacy achievements and continued embrace of history's gentled, it has passed into the eternal sleep. The morning silence that follows completion carries a weight different from any sound that has come before. In villages scattered along the Nile, men who once carried limestone blocks now return to fields that seem impossibly small after years of building toward the heavens. Their hands, permanently marked by rope burns and stone dust, guide simple ploughs through soil that feels fragile compared to the granite they once shaped with surgical precision. Katie walks through Memphis for the first time in months without construction schedules filling his thoughts, his scribe's palette hanging unused at his side. The papyrus scrolls that once contained calculations for moving mountains now record grain inventories and tax assessments, their mundane contents a stark contrast to the mathematical poetry that enabled humanity's greatest achievement. Around him, the city adjusts to rhythms not dictated by pyramid deadlines, its inhabitants slowly remembering what normal life felt like before they dared to build for eternity. In workshops throughout the kingdom, master craftsmen find themselves with skills that surpass any earthly application. Bronzesmiths who created tools capable of shaping granite return to forging simple agricultural implements, their advanced metallurgy applied to mundane purposes that seem almost insulting after years of pushing materials beyond their apparent limitations. The knowledge accumulated through decades of innovation remains locked in their experienced hands, waiting for the next pharaoh who will dare to attempt something equally impossible. The economic transformation that follows pyramid completion ripples through Egyptian society like floodwaters receding after inundation. Communities that prospered by supplying construction materials return to traditional agriculture and local crafts, their expanded capabilities now applied to projects whose scope barely challenges abilities developed through monumental construction. Trade networks established to transport massive stones adapt to carrying ordinary goods, their sophisticated logistics systems managing cargoes that seem trivial after years of coordinating impossible movements across vast distances. Young apprentices who learned precision stoneworking in pyramid workshops discover that their skills open pathways to careers their fathers never imagined possible. Temple construction projects throughout the kingdom seek craftsmen trained to standards that exceed anything previously demanded in religious architecture. Private tombs for wealthy nobles become laboratories where techniques developed for royal monuments find new applications in smaller but equally demanding projects. The administrative innovations that enabled pyramid coordination transform governmental operations throughout Egypt. Their efficiency applied to managing provinces and coordinating military campaigns with unprecedented effectiveness. Scribes trained in construction logistics become provincial governors, whose organizational capabilities revolutionize local administration. Military commanders who learned personnel management through pyramid work apply similar principles to army organization, creating forces more disciplined and effective than any previous Egyptian military units. In the villages where seasonal workers once departed annually for pyramid service, agricultural productivity increases as improved tools and techniques developed for construction find applications in farming. Irrigation systems designed according to engineering principles learned through stone transport improve crop yields while reducing labor requirements. The mathematical knowledge gained through calculating loads and angles enables farmers to optimize field layouts and storage facilities according to principles that maximize efficiency. The cultural confidence that emerges from completing humanity's first eternal monument permeates every aspect of Egyptian society, inspiring artists and architects to pursue projects that reflect similar ambitions for permanence and perfection. Temple complexes throughout the kingdom incorporate design elements derived from pyramid construction, their proportions and decoration standards influenced by techniques developed for royal architecture. Sculptors who learned precision carving in underground chambers create statues that surpass anything produced in earlier periods, their skills enabling artistic achievements that will influence Egyptian aesthetics for thousands of years. religious practices evolved to incorporate beliefs and rituals developed through pyramid construction, their ceremonies reflecting understanding of divine architecture gained through years of creating spaces designed to facilitate royal resurrection. Priests trained in both theology and engineering establish educational institutions that preserve technical knowledge while developing new applications for skills acquired through monumental construction. The fusion of practical capability with spiritual purpose creates intellectual traditions that will influence Egyptian civilization for millennia. Foreign kingdoms throughout the ancient world receive reports of Egyptian achievements that enhance the kingdom's international prestige while establishing trade relationships based on recognition of superior organizational capabilities. Diplomatic missions arrive seeking Egyptian expertise in construction and administration, their requests creating opportunities for cultural exchange that spread Egyptian innovations throughout the Mediterranean world. The pyramid itself becomes a symbol of Egyptian power that influences international relations for centuries.